The government just set the stage to take control of Bitcoin. And if you're not prepared, you could lose everything. On January 23, 2025, former President Trump signed an executive order creating what he called a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Headlines hailed it as a victory for cryptocurrency enthusiasts, government endorsement, American innovation, digital asset leadership. Crypto markets surged. Social media erupted. Everyone saw it as bullish. Everyone, that is, except the people who actually read the fine print. Because if you dig into the language, examine the legal framework, and understand what strategic reserves really mean in federal policy, the reality is far more alarming. This isn't just pro-crypto policy. It's a blueprint for something much bigger, something we've seen before. In 1933, the U.S. government used almost identical terminology to confiscate gold from citizens, revalue it, and erase nearly 40% of the national debt overnight. They called it a strategic national asset. They claimed it was vital to economic stability. They gave the Treasury the authority to acquire and hold it. And then, for 41 years, it was illegal for Americans to own gold. Executive Order 6102 became the largest wealth seizure in U.S. history. And most people only realized it when it was too late to act. Trump's Bitcoin order mirrors that structure almost line for line. I'm going to break down the executive order, explain the legal authorities it grants, highlight the language that mirrors 1933, and outline the phased strategy it creates for potential government acquisition and eventual revaluation of Bitcoin. This order is not an endpoint. It's step one in a multi-phase plan that positions the government to do exactly what Roosevelt did with gold. When the official valuation is announced and compliance becomes mandatory, you will either be prepared or you'll lose. The executive order's title, Strengthening American Leadership in Digital Financial Technology, sounds positive. It evokes innovation, competitiveness, and national leadership. But titles are marketing. The substance is in the sections themselves. Section 1 declares digital assets essential to U.S. economic security and positions the federal government to acquire, hold, and manage them as strategic reserves. Read that carefully. The government, not you, will own Bitcoin, building a reserve similar to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve or Fort Knox's gold holdings. Section 2 grants explicit authority. It directs the Treasury to design frameworks for acquisition, develop custody solutions, establish valuation methods, and implement accounting standards for government-held digital assets. This isn't symbolic. You don't build this kind of infrastructure for a minor holding. You build it for billions, potentially trillions in assets. Section 3 details acquisition methods. The government can acquire Bitcoin through market purchases, criminal seizures. They already hold over 210,000 from previous operations, and fines or settlements. The order sets no caps, no limits. This is the machinery for large-scale accumulation. Compare this to 1933. Roosevelt's order declared gold a strategic asset vital to national stability. Trump's declares Bitcoin essential to national security. Roosevelt granted the Treasury authority to acquire and hold gold. Trump grants identical authority for digital assets. Roosevelt eventually mandated delivery and imposed penalties for non-compliance. Trump has not done so yet, but the legal framework exists to do exactly that. The pattern is identical: declare an asset strategic, grant acquisition authority, build infrastructure, then mandate compliance. Steps 1 through 3 are done. Step 4, the enforcement and revaluation, comes next. Why would the government want to confiscate Bitcoin? The U.S. owes $37 trillion, with interest payments soaring toward $2 trillion annually by 2027. Taxes, spending cuts, and growth won't solve it. History shows the effective solution is asset revaluation. In 1933, gold confiscation and revaluation increased government balance sheet value and simultaneously devalued the dollar, effectively erasing 40% of the national debt. Bitcoin could be treated the same way. If the government accumulates 1 million Bitcoin at a fraction of market value, then declares its official value at 100 million per coin, the U.S. balance sheet suddenly jumps by 1,000 trillion in Bitcoin alone. enough to offset enormous portions of the debt. The executive order also creates a working group across Treasury, Justice, and Commerce. This is not for study, it's for execution. Treasury handles acquisition. Justice handles enforcement and seizures. Commerce manages market impact and coordination. The order mandates custody solutions at scale, multi-billion-dollar security systems, and government-controlled wallets. Infrastructure like this takes 12-18 months to establish, meaning mid-2026 is when serious accumulation could begin. Crypto holders might celebrate protections for lawful holders, but future regulations could redefine who is lawful. Registration, reporting, licensing, and compliance requirements could make non-compliance unlawful, triggering forced sales. Mandatory sale mechanisms will feel voluntary, but are cleverly structured fail to comply, and you face prosecution or asset seizure. The phase timeline is clear: 2025 legal framework and narrative building, 2026 quiet accumulation and regulatory tightening, 2027 crisis triggers mandatory action and official revaluation. Market prices rise, the dollar collapses, debts are devalued, and wealth transfers from compliant citizens to the government and insiders who foresaw it. Who wins? The government, insiders, non-compliant early holders, and foreign jurisdictions outside U.S. reach. Who loses? Compliant sellers, cash holders, the middle class, and anyone holding dollar-denominated debt. The parallels to 1933 are undeniable, and the stakes are larger because the U.S. debt is exponentially bigger. Protection strategies exist: self-custody of Bitcoin, minimizing KYC exposure, diversifying across international jurisdictions, holding other hard assets like gold, real estate, and commodities, and understanding compliance dynamics. The key is acting before the confiscation window closes. The executive order is not what the headlines suggest. It's not a celebration of crypto innovation. It's the foundation for strategic acquisition, valuation, and potential confiscation, mirroring Roosevelt's 1933 playbook. The infrastructure is being built, the working group is active, and the clock is ticking. You have roughly 18-36 months to position yourself to survive the coming phases. Start now, understand the legal language, and prepare. Once the government moves, it will be too late.